When people think of the Battle of Britain, one aircraft immediately comes to mind: the Supermarine Spitfire. This sleek, elegant fighter has captured imaginations for over 8 decades, becoming the symbol of British resistance during the darkest days of World War II. But there was another fighter that fought alongside the Spitfire, a fighter that actually shot down more German aircraft during the Battle of Britain, a fighter that equipped more squadrons and flew more sorties. That fighter was the Hawker Hurricane, and despite its critical role in Britain's finest hour, it has largely been overshadowed by its more glamorous stablemate. This is the story of the forgotten hero, the workhorse that helped save Britain from invasion. The Hurricane's origins lie in the mid-1930s, when the Royal Air Force was beginning to modernize after years of underfunding and obsolete equipment. The RAF's frontline fighters were biplanes, Gloucester Gladiators and Hawker Furies, capable aircraft by 1920 standards, but hopelessly outclassed by the modern monoplane fighters being developed in Germany, Italy, and the United States. The Air Ministry recognized the need for modern fighters and issued specifications for new designs. Sidney Cam, chief designer at Hawker Aircraft, responded with a design that would become the Hurricane. Cam was an experienced aircraft designer who had been with Hawker since 1923, designing successful biplane fighters, including the Fury. For the new monoplane fighter, Cam retained some traditional Hawker construction techniques while incorporating modern features. The result was a hybrid design, modern in configuration, but traditional in construction. The Hurricane's fuselage was built using a method that would have been familiar to World War I aircraft builders: a metal tubular framework covered with fabric. This was old-fashioned compared to the all-metal, stressed-skin construction used in the Spitfire and most other modern fighters. But it had advantages. It was simpler to manufacture, easier to repair in the field, and didn't require sophisticated tooling or highly skilled workers. In a country that would soon be fighting for survival, these practical advantages would prove crucial. The wings were a different matter. They used modern construction, with metal spars and stressed skin covering, providing the strength needed to withstand high-speed flight while keeping weight reasonable. The landing gear was retractable, reducing drag compared to fixed-gear fighters. The cockpit was enclosed, protecting the pilot and improving aerodynamics. The armament was revolutionary for a British fighter: 8.303 caliber Browning machine guns mounted in the wings, providing concentrated firepower far exceeding earlier fighters' 2 or 4 guns. Power came from the Rolls-Royce Merlin, the same power plant used in the Spitfire. The Merlin was one of the finest aircraft engines ever created, combining high power output with reasonable reliability and good high-altitude performance. In early Hurricanes, the Merlin II produced 1,030 horsepower. Later versions used more powerful Merlin variants, eventually reaching over 1,600 horsepower in late war models. The prototype Hurricane first flew on November 6, 1935, with Hawker's chief test pilot George Bowman at the controls. Initial testing showed promising performance. The Hurricane was fast, about 316 miles per hour maximum speed, significantly faster than any biplane fighter. It had good maneuverability, particularly at lower altitudes. The 8-gun armament was devastating in testing against target drones. The Air Ministry was impressed and ordered production aircraft even before testing was complete. Production Hurricanes began reaching RAF squadrons in December 1937, making the Hurricane the RAF's first monoplane fighter to enter service. Pilots transitioning from biplanes found the Hurricane relatively easy to fly. Unlike some modern fighters that were demanding and unforgiving, the Hurricane was stable and predictable. The wide-track landing gear made ground handling easy, reducing landing accidents. Visibility from the cockpit was excellent, crucial for spotting enemy aircraft. These pilot-friendly characteristics meant that squadron conversion to Hurricanes proceeded smoothly. By September 1939, when Britain declared war on Germany, the RAF had 18 Hurricane squadrons operational. This represented a significant portion of RAF Fighter Command's strength. The Spitfire, while slightly faster and better at high altitude, was still working out production problems and equipped only 9 squadrons. The Hurricane was Britain's primary modern fighter, and it would carry much of the burden in the difficult months ahead. The Hurricane's combat debut came during the phony war period, the months between September 1939 and May 1940, when large-scale ground fighting had not yet begun. RAF Hurricane squadrons deployed to France as part of the British Expeditionary Force, providing air cover for British troops. They engaged German reconnaissance aircraft and fought small-scale battles with German fighters. These early engagements proved the Hurricane's effectiveness. It could destroy German aircraft, and when hit, its rugged construction often allowed it to return to base for repair. The German invasion of France in May 1940 thrust Hurricanes into intense combat. Additional Hurricane squadrons deployed to France, and they fought desperately against overwhelming German numerical superiority. Hurricane pilots achieved notable successes, shooting down German bombers and fighters, but losses were severe. The Luftwaffe had numerical superiority, better coordination between fighters and bombers, and the advantage of fighting over friendly territory, while the RAF operated from distant bases. As France collapsed, Hurricane squadrons withdrew to Britain, many pilots flying their damaged aircraft across the Channel in the evacuation. Approximately 200 Hurricanes were lost during the Battle of France, about a quarter of Fighter Command's strength. But the survivors brought valuable combat experience. They had learned German tactics, had tested their aircraft in combat, and knew what worked and what didn't. This experience would prove invaluable in the battle to come. The Battle of Britain began in July 1940, when the Luftwaffe launched sustained attacks on British shipping, ports, and airfields. Hitler's plan for invading Britain, Operation Sea Lion, required German air superiority. The Luftwaffe would destroy the RAF, then German forces could cross the Channel without facing effective air opposition. Everything depended on the Luftwaffe winning the air battle. Fighter Command's commander, Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding, had approximately 600 fighters available in July 1940, about 30 squadrons of Hurricanes and 19 squadrons of Spitfires. Against them, the Luftwaffe could deploy approximately 2,600 aircraft, including about 1,000 fighters. The Germans had numerical superiority, combat experience from campaigns in Poland, Norway, and France, and confidence in their abilities. Dowding's strategy was defensive and conservative. He couldn't afford to lose fighters faster than they could be replaced. He divided his forces, keeping some in reserve while rotating squadrons through frontline duty. He used radar, a new technology that gave British controllers early warning of German raids, to position fighters to intercept German formations rather than wasteful standing patrols. He emphasized preserving his force while inflicting maximum casualties on the Germans. Within this strategy, the Hurricane and Spitfire were assigned different tactical roles based on their capabilities. Spitfires, with their better high-altitude performance and speed, would engage German fighters, preventing them from interfering with British bombers or protecting German bombers. Hurricanes, slightly slower but more numerous and with excellent armament, would attack the German bomber formations. This division of labor played to each aircraft's strengths. Squadron leader Peter Townsend, commanding No. 85 Squadron flying Hurricanes, described the tactical employment. Our job was to get through to the bombers. The Spitfires would deal with the 109s, the German fighters, while we went after the bombers. A Hurricane could take more punishment than a Spitfire, which was important when flying through bomber defensive fire. And our 8 guns could do tremendous damage to bombers. We'd attack in line astern, one after another diving through the bomber formation, each pilot firing at a different bomber. A well-executed attack could break up an entire bomber formation.
The Hurricane proved ideally suited to anti-bomber work. Its sturdy construction meant it could absorb defensive fire from bomber gunners and often remain flyable. Its 8 machine guns, firing 160 rounds per second combined, could saw through bomber structures with devastating effect. Its good low-altitude handling meant pilots could maneuver effectively during attacks, and there were enough Hurricanes that losses, while painful, could be replaced. The statistics from the Battle of Britain tell a surprising story. Hurricanes shot down more German aircraft than Spitfires. Approximately 1,593 kills claimed by Hurricane pilots compared to about 1,123 by Spitfire pilots. This reflected both the Hurricane's greater numbers and its assignment to anti-bomber duty, where targets were more plentiful. The Hurricane proved itself the equal of any German aircraft and superior to most. But the Hurricane's contribution went beyond kill statistics. The aircraft's ruggedness meant damaged Hurricanes often returned to base, where Spitfires might have been lost. Its simpler construction meant repairs could be done quickly, getting aircraft back into combat faster. Its ease of handling meant less experienced pilots could fly it effectively, important as casualties mounted and replacement pilots arrived with minimal training. These practical advantages were as important as combat performance. Pilot Officer Geoffrey Page, shot down and severely burned during the Battle of Britain, described his Hurricane's durability. "I was attacking of Dornier when a Me-109 got on my tail. He hit me multiple times. The Hurricane caught fire. I could feel the heat, smell the burning fabric. I bailed out and survived, though badly burned. Later, I learned my Hurricane had been found. It crashed but didn't disintegrate. They recovered it and repaired it. That same aircraft flew again. Try that with an all-metal aircraft that's been shot up and set on fire. The Hurricane's old-fashioned construction was actually an advantage." The intensity of the Battle of Britain peaked in August and September 1940. The Luftwaffe launched massive raids against British airfields, attempting to destroy fighter command on the ground and in the air. Hurricane squadrons flew multiple sorties per day, pilots exhausted but continuing to fight. Aircraft were repaired overnight, damaged planes cannibalized for parts to keep others flying. Ground crews worked around the clock, servicing engines, repairing damage, rearming guns. The entire RAF system operated at maximum capacity, and the Hurricane squadrons bore the brunt of the fighting. The crisis came in early September when the Luftwaffe concentrated on fighter command airfields in southeast England. Airfields were being destroyed faster than they could be repaired. Fighters were being lost faster than replacements arrived. Pilot casualties were mounting, and replacement pilots had inadequate training. Fighter command was approaching the breaking point. If the Luftwaffe maintained pressure for another week or two, British air defenses might collapse. Then, Hitler made a critical mistake. Angered by an RAF bombing raid on Berlin, he ordered the Luftwaffe to shift from attacking airfields to bombing London and other cities. This gave fighter command desperately needed time to recover. Airfields were repaired, replacement aircraft arrived, and exhausted squadrons got brief rest. The Battle of Britain continued, but fighter command had survived the crisis. Flight Lieutenant Brian Lane, commanding No. 19 Squadron flying Spitfires, observed the Hurricane Squadron's performance. The Hurricane boys were magnificent. They took the worst of it, attacking the bomber formations while we dealt with the fighters. They suffered higher casualties because they were engaging the bombers and their defensive fire, plus any German fighters that got through us. But they never wavered. Day after day they scrambled to intercept, fought their battles, lost friends, and went up again. Without the Hurricanes absorbing the majority of the combat, I don't think we could have won. By October 1940, the Luftwaffe had clearly lost the Battle of Britain. German losses exceeded British losses. Fighter command retained operational capability, and Hitler postponed Operation Sea Lion indefinitely. Britain had survived. The Spitfire received most of the credit in public perception and propaganda, but those who fought the battle knew the Hurricane's crucial role. The Battle of Britain was the Hurricane's finest moment, but its story didn't end there. The aircraft continued serving in multiple roles throughout the war, evolving and adapting to changing requirements. When the Hurricane proved increasingly outclassed by improved German fighters in 1941 and 1942, it transitioned to ground attack and close air support roles. The Hurricane 2D variant, introduced in 1942, carried two 40mm Vickers S cannons in underwing pods, creating a formidable anti-tank aircraft. These tank busters proved highly effective in North Africa, where they destroyed numerous German and Italian tanks and vehicles. The heavy cannon required careful aim and close approach, making the mission extremely dangerous, but skilled pilots achieved remarkable success. Squadron leader Jeffrey Page, recovered from his burns and returned to combat flying, flew Hurricane tank busters in North Africa. The 40mm cannon was devastatingly effective against tanks. You'd approach at low level, identify your target, usually from the rear or side where armor was thinner, and fire a burst. The cannon rounds would penetrate the armor, and the tank would brew up. But you had to get close, maybe 200 yards or less, and you were flying low and slow, making you vulnerable to ground fire. Many pilots were shot down doing these attacks. It took nerve and skill, but the results justified the risk. The Hurricane also served extensively in North Africa, Malta, and the Mediterranean theater as a fighter and fighter-bomber. In the defense of Malta, the tiny island that Britain held despite being within easy range of German and Italian aircraft, Hurricanes formed the primary defense for much of 1941 and early 1942. Flying from Malta's battered airfields, often outnumbered and facing superior German fighters, Hurricane pilots defended the island with remarkable courage. Pilot officer Timber Woods, who defended Malta in a hurricane, described the desperate conditions. "We were always outnumbered, always short of ammunition, fuel, and spare parts. The Italians would come over with scores of bombers escorted by fighters. We'd scramble whatever Hurricanes were serviceable, sometimes only 2 or 3 aircraft, and intercept. We'd attack the bombers, try to break up their formation, shoot down what we could. The Italian pilots weren't particularly aggressive, so we could achieve results despite being outnumbered. But when the Luftwaffe arrived with Me-109s, things got much harder. The 109s were faster and could outclimb us. We survived through teamwork and tactics, not superior equipment." The Hurricane served on the Eastern Front as well, supplied to the Soviet Union under Lend-Lease. Over 2,900 Hurricanes were delivered to the Soviet Union between 1941 and 1944. Soviet pilots had mixed opinions. They appreciated the Hurricane's ruggedness and heavy armament, but found it inferior to Soviet fighters like the Yak-9 and La-Hive in performance. Hurricanes served primarily in ground attack and bomber escort roles on the Eastern Front, where their sturdy construction and reliability were valued. In the Far East, Hurricanes fought against the Japanese, defending Malaya, Singapore, Burma, and India. The early Hurricanes sent to the Far East were often worn-out aircraft from European theaters, and they faced Japanese fighters that proved shockingly superior in many respects. The Mitsubishi A6M0 was more maneuverable, had longer range, and, in the hands of experienced Japanese pilots, dominated early air combat in the Pacific. Pilot Officer Frank Carey, who flew Hurricanes defending Burma in 1942, described the challenge. "The Zero was a nasty shock. It could outturn us, outclimb us, and the Japanese pilots were very skilled. We lost many pilots who tried to dogfight Zeros. It was suicide. We developed tactics that played to our strengths. Hit-and-run attacks using our superior diving speed. Never try to turn with them. Stick together for mutual support." The Hurricane could take damage that would destroy a Zero. Their aircraft were lightly built and caught fire easily. But they had the performance advantage, and we had to adapt or die. Despite the challenges, Hurricanes continued serving in the Far East throughout 1942 and 1943, eventually replaced by more modern aircraft. The ruggedness that had served so well in Europe proved equally valuable in the harsh conditions of Burma and India. Jungle humidity, intense heat, dust, and primitive maintenance facilities, Hurricanes kept flying when more sophisticated aircraft would have been grounded by maintenance problems.
The Hurricane also served with the Royal Navy as the Sea Hurricane, operating from aircraft carriers and merchant aircraft carriers, MAX ships. These carrier-borne hurricanes defended Arctic convoys to Russia and Mediterranean convoys, providing air cover where land-based fighters couldn't reach. The Sea Hurricane featured an arrestor hook for carrier landings and often had catapult fittings for launch from catapult-equipped merchant ships. Lieutenant Commander Richard Brebner, who flew Sea Hurricanes from escort carriers in the Atlantic, described the experience. Landing a Hurricane on a carrier deck was challenging. The carrier deck is short and moving, pitching and rolling in the sea. The Hurricane's wide landing gear helped, giving good stability on landing. The aircraft could take a hard landing better than more delicate designs. We provided air cover for convoys, driving off German reconnaissance aircraft and bombers. The Hurricane wasn't ideal for carrier operations, it wasn't designed for it, but it did the job when nothing else was available. Production of the Hurricane continued until 1944, with approximately 14,500 aircraft built. This made the Hurricane the second most produced British aircraft of the war, after the Spitfire. The Hurricane equipped numerous RAF squadrons throughout the war and served with many Allied air forces, including those of Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Belgium, and the Soviet Union. The technical evolution of the Hurricane paralleled combat experience. Engine upgrades increased power from 1,030 horsepower in early models to over 1,600 horsepower in late war variants. Armament evolved from 8 .303 machine guns to various combinations including 4 20mm cannons, 2 40mm cannons, or combinations of guns and rockets. The ability to carry bombs up to 500 pounds transformed the Hurricane into an effective ground attack aircraft. These upgrades kept the basic design competitive as requirements changed. The Hurricane's construction method, initially seen as old-fashioned, proved advantageous in several ways. Battle damage could often be repaired in the field by ground crew. Fabric covering could be patched, damaged metal tubes could be replaced, and the aircraft returned to service quickly. This contrasted with stress-skin metal construction, where structural damage required specialized facilities to repair. RAF squadrons maintained higher aircraft availability rates with Hurricanes than with more modern designs because repairs were simpler. Ground crew who maintained Hurricanes praised the aircraft's simplicity and accessibility. Engine changes could be accomplished relatively quickly. Access panels allowed easy maintenance of guns, hydraulics, and other systems. The straightforward design meant that even relatively inexperienced ground crew could perform basic maintenance effectively. In a war where trained personnel were scarce, these practical advantages were significant. The relationship between Hurricane pilots and their aircraft was generally positive. The Hurricane wasn't glamorous like the Spitfire. It was utilitarian, workmanlike, even slightly ungainly in appearance. But pilots trusted it. They knew the Hurricane would bring them home even when badly damaged. They appreciated its stability and predictability, especially important for less experienced pilots. They valued its gun platform stability and heavy armament. The Hurricane might not win any beauty contests, but it was a fighter pilot's friend. Wing Commander Tom Neal, who flew Hurricanes throughout the Battle of Britain and later campaigns, wrote, "The Hurricane was a gentleman's aircraft. It didn't bite, didn't have vicious characteristics, treated its pilot well. You could throw a Hurricane around the sky with confidence, knowing it would respond predictably. When you were hit, and in combat everyone got hit eventually, the Hurricane absorbed the punishment and kept flying. I knew pilots who were shot down in Spitfires from damage that a Hurricane would have survived. The Hurricane wasn't as fast or as glamorous, but it was the aircraft I'd want when things got desperate."
The post-war fate of the Hurricane was typical for wartime aircraft: rapid retirement and disposal. With the war won, Britain had no need for thousands of Hurricanes. Many were scrapped, others were sold to foreign air forces. A few continued in secondary roles: training, target towing, meteorological reconnaissance. By 1950, the Hurricane had virtually disappeared from operational service. The Spitfire continued longer in some roles, reinforcing the perception that it had been the superior aircraft. The Hurricane's historical reputation has been complicated by its overshadowing by the Spitfire. Wartime propaganda and post-war media emphasized the Spitfire, creating an enduring image of Britain's defiance, symbolized by the elegant fighter. The Hurricane, despite its equal or greater contribution, became the forgotten partner. Historians and aviation enthusiasts have worked to correct this imbalance, emphasizing the Hurricane's crucial role, but popular perception remains Spitfire-centric. The statistics support the Hurricane's importance. During the Battle of Britain, Hurricanes equipped 32 squadrons compared to 19 Spitfire squadrons. Hurricanes flew more sorties, engaged more enemy aircraft, and claimed more victories. Hurricane pilots earned 14 Victoria Crosses during the war, compared to 4 awarded to Spitfire pilots. These numbers aren't meant to diminish the Spitfire's achievements, but to highlight the Hurricane's too often overlooked contributions. Several factors contributed to the Hurricane's lower profile compared to the Spitfire. The Spitfire's elliptical wings gave it a distinctive, elegant appearance that photographed beautifully and captured imaginations. The Hurricane's appearance was more conventional, even slightly dated. The Spitfire's superior high-altitude performance made it the better interceptor against high-flying German raiders, a role that received publicity. The Hurricane's ground attack missions, while militarily important, were less glamorous. And post-war, the Spitfire continued development and service while the Hurricane quickly disappeared.
But those who flew and maintained Hurricanes knew their worth. Sidney Cam's design, combining traditional and modern elements, created an aircraft that was exactly what Britain needed in 1940, available in numbers, capable in combat, repairable when damaged, and flyable by pilots of varying skill levels. The Hurricane's contribution to Britain's survival cannot be overstated. The technical comparison between Hurricane and Spitfire reveals two different design philosophies. The Spitfire represented cutting-edge design, stressed skin construction, aerodynamic refinement, performance optimization. It was the better pure fighter, particularly at high altitude. The Hurricane represented practical design, ease of production, simplicity of maintenance, ruggedness, and reliability. It was the better all-around weapon platform, adaptable to various roles and conditions. Both aircraft used the same Merlin engine, but the Spitfire's aerodynamic advantages gave it about 10 miles per hour higher top speed. The Spitfire had better climb, rate, and ceiling, but the Hurricane had better low-altitude maneuverability, better visibility from the cockpit, easier ground handling, and more stable gun platform characteristics. Neither aircraft was clearly superior. They were different tools for different jobs. Military historians studying the Battle of Britain often emphasize that Britain's victory resulted from multiple factors: the integrated air defense system built around radar and ground control, superior British intelligence, German strategic mistakes, pilot quality, and aircraft capability. The Hurricane and Spitfire together provided the aircraft capability, but neither alone could have won the battle. Both were necessary, and the Hurricane's greater numbers and versatility were as important as the Spitfire's performance advantages. The Hurricane's influence on aircraft design was less direct than the Spitfire's, but still significant. It demonstrated that combining traditional and modern construction techniques could produce effective aircraft quickly. It showed the value of designing for ease of manufacture and repair, not just maximum performance. It proved that a slightly less capable aircraft, available in large numbers, could be more militarily valuable than a superior aircraft available in limited quantities.
These lessons influenced post-war thinking about military aircraft procurement. The human stories of hurricane pilots reveal extraordinary courage and dedication. They flew aircraft they knew were inferior to some opponents, faced overwhelming odds, and continued fighting despite heavy losses. They adapted tactics to compensate for equipment limitations, supported each other through shared hardship, and achieved victory through skill and determination. Sergeant Pilot Eric Baughn, who flew Hurricanes during the Battle of Britain and survived being shot down twice, described the experience. "You knew going up that German 109s could outperform you in many ways. You knew you might not come back. But you went anyway because England was below you, and if you didn't fight, there was no one else. The Hurricane gave you a chance. It was tough, it had powerful guns, and it could take punishment. You learned to use what advantages you had and avoid situations that favored the enemy. We lost many pilots, many friends, but we kept the Germans from winning, and that's what mattered." The mechanics, armorers, and ground crew who kept Hurricanes flying deserve equal recognition. Working in all weather, often under enemy fire, they performed miracles of maintenance with limited resources. They repaired battle-damaged aircraft overnight to fly again next day, scrounged spare parts, improvised solutions to mechanical problems, and kept their squadrons operational through sheer dedication and ingenuity. Flight Sergeant Albert Mitchell, a Hurricane flight engineer throughout the war, recalled, "We worked on those aircraft in rain, snow, heat, and cold. Bombs would fall on the airfield, and we'd keep working. Aircraft would return shot full of holes, and we'd patch them overnight to fly again next day. We cannibalized wrecked aircraft for parts, improvised repairs with whatever materials we could find. The pilots got the glory, but we knew those Hurricanes flew because of our work. Every aircraft we returned to service was one more fighter in the air, one more chance to stop the Germans. That knowledge kept us going through the exhaustion and danger." The legacy of the Hawker Hurricane is ultimately one of understated heroism, an aircraft that did what was needed, when it was needed, without flash or glamour, and then quietly retired when more modern designs took over. It won the Battle of Britain alongside the Spitfire, but received far less recognition. It served in every theater of war, performing missions ranging from air superiority to ground attack to tank busting to naval defense. It was reliable, rugged, and effective, the qualities that win wars even if they don't capture imaginations. From Sidney Cam's drawing board in 1934 to the last operational Hurricane retired in the early 1950s, from the skies over southern England in 1940 to the deserts of North Africa to the jungles of Burma, the Hawker Hurricane earned its place in history through solid, reliable service. It was the forgotten hero of the Battle of Britain, the workhorse that complemented the Spitfire's racehorse, the practical tool that helped Britain survive its darkest hour. The Hurricane story is a reminder that in warfare, glory often goes to the flashy and spectacular, while the essential and reliable work goes unrecognized. The Spitfire deserves its legendary status, but so does the Hurricane. Both were necessary for victory. Both saved Britain from invasion. Both should be remembered as the fighters that won the Battle of Britain. The Hurricane may have been forgotten by popular history, but those who flew it, maintained it, and depended on it knew its worth. And that knowledge, passed down through veterans' accounts and careful historical research, ensures that the Hurricane's true contribution will not be lost. The forgotten hero deserves to be remembered, and remembering the Hawker Hurricane means understanding that sometimes the most important weapons are not the most famous ones, but the reliable ones that do their job day after day, battle after battle, until victory is won.